The night reality TV fans thought they had seen every possible scandal. A bombshell dropped that left even the most hardened viewers speechless. Kirk Frost, the man who has built a career dodging rumors and spinning drama into ratings gold, is now at the center of a jaw-dropping DNA nightmare that no one saw coming. Word is spreading like wildfire that Kirk has not one, but 2 secret wives, and 3 babies caught in the middle of a tangled web of lies, loyalty, and late-night betrayals. Fans are shocked, insiders are whispering, and the entire love and hip-hop universe is in total meltdown. It all started with a single envelope. A sealed DNA report that was supposed to bring clarity but instead blew the Frost family wide open. Cameras were rolling when a trembling Rashida clutched the papers, her voice shaking as she asked, "Kirk, what is this? Who are these children?" Kirk's face went pale, his eyes darting to the floor as producers scrambled to capture every second of the chaos. In the background, friends gasped, phones lit up with frantic texts, and the room turned into a storm of accusations and broken trust. Emotions ran high as Rashida demanded answers. The alleged second wife fired back with claims of hidden ceremonies and late-night confessions, and a stunned group of cast members tried to piece together a timeline that made sense. Was Kirk living a double life? Or is this the ultimate setup by a scorned rival? Social media erupted within minutes, hashtags like #KirkDoubleLife and #DNA Deception trending across every platform. The Frost Empire, once a picture of messy but enduring love, now stands on the edge of a scandal that could destroy everything. And this is only the beginning. Kirk stood frozen in the middle of the living room as the camera lights glared against the tense silence, his throat tightening under the weight of every eye fixed on him while Rashida's breathing turned into sharp, uneven bursts that cut through the air like broken glass. And before anyone could even process the first set of revelations, a second wave of chaos swept in when the front door swung open and a tall woman with striking red braids strode inside, clutching a diaper bag, her voice carrying a raw edge as she shouted, "Don't act like you don't know me, Kirk. You promised you'd tell her tonight," and the entire room erupted with gasps as Rashida's knees buckled slightly, her best friend, Kendra, rushing to hold her upright while the producers scrambled to capture every angle of this unplanned entrance. And Kirk could only mutter, "Tasha, please don't do this right now," which only made the woman raise her voice louder, declaring for everyone to hear that she was not just a fling but his legal wife from a quiet courthouse ceremony in Atlanta 3 years ago, a claim that sent the cast members into frantic whispers as phones lit up with messages from crew members outside confirming that a marriage license had already been leaked to gossip blogs. And Rashida, trembling but defiant, stepped forward, demanding to know how many more secrets he was hiding, her words laced with both fury and heartbreak as she spat, "You've humiliated me on national television for the last time," while Kirk tried to steady his voice and explained that the second marriage was a drunken mistake meant to protect a business deal, an excuse that only fueled the fire when Tasha pulled out a folder of photographs showing family outings, baby showers, and text messages where Kirk promised he would one day bring both families together, a promise that now sounded like a confession of a double life. And as the cameras zoomed in on Rashida's tear-streaked face, the tension reached a breaking point when Tasha dropped the final bomb, revealing that she had recently given birth to twins who shared Kirk's unmistakable dimples, a revelation that sent the room into a frenzy of overlapping shouts as Kendra demanded proof. The twins' godmother produced hospital bracelets, and one of the producers whispered into his headset to keep filming no matter what because this footage would shatter ratings records, while Kirk buried his face in his hands, muttering that he needed a minute, a plea drowned out by Rashida's raw cry of betrayal echoing across the set, a sound that instantly flooded social media as live leaks began to circulate from hidden crew phones. Hashtags like #TwinShock and #SecondWedding now trending within minutes. And while fans across the country typed furious comments about loyalty and deception, the drama inside the house escalated as Rashida demanded a DNA test on the spot, her voice trembling but firm as she shouted that she would not spend another day living in doubt, prompting a frantic scramble for a mobile testing kit from a nearby clinic that had been on standby for production emergencies. And as a crew member rushed out to retrieve it, the cast huddled in small groups, some consoling Rashida, others questioning Kirk, while Tasha calmly rocked a sleeping baby in her arms and repeated that she only wanted the truth to come out, her quiet confidence only deepening the sense that Kirk's carefully crafted image was unraveling faster than he could contain it. And just when it seemed the chaos had reached its peak, the doorbell rang again, drawing every head toward the entrance where yet another figure stood silhouetted against the hallway light. A woman with a baby carrier balanced on her hip and an envelope clutched tightly in her hand. her presence igniting a fresh round of stunned gasps as Rashida whispered, "Not again," while Kirk staggered back a step, his face draining of color as the stranger quietly said, "I think we need to talk about our son," and the room exploded into a deafening roar of disbelief that no amount of security could quiet. Kirk's shoulders sagged under the crushing weight of the new arrival as the third woman stepped fully into the room, her voice steady but tinged with a sadness that cut through the chaos. Introducing herself as Monique, while gently adjusting the tiny baby strapped against her chest, the infant stirring and letting out a small cry that made Rashida's heart lurch even as rage burned hotter in her veins. And the air grew thick with murmurs from cast members who could barely process the mounting revelations, some clutching their phones in disbelief as the crew whispered frantic updates to producers outside. But Monique wasted no time explaining that she had been in a quiet relationship with Kirk for nearly 2 years and had come forward only after seeing the earlier DNA leak online, claiming that Kirk had promised to leave all other entanglements behind and start a fresh family with her, a statement that made Rashida step forward with a sharp, "How many families do you need, Kirk?" While her best friend Kendra grabbed a tissue and muttered that this was beyond anything reality TV had ever seen. And Kirk, his voice cracking, tried to speak over the storm by insisting that things weren't what they seemed, only to be interrupted when Monique calmly held up the envelope and said, "This is the test you asked for, Kirk, it's positive," which sent the room into a wave of shouts and gasps as cameras zoomed in on the DNA report stamped with official seals. That left little room for denial. And as Rashida's eyes filled with tears, she staggered back into a chair, whispering to herself about years of loyalty and sacrifice, while Tasha crossed her arms and scoffed that Kirk had been playing everyone all along, igniting a heated argument between the two women as accusations flew across the room, their voices rising until the producer stepped forward, begging for calm but failing to stop the eruption of insults and painful confessions. And in the corner, Kirk buried his face in his hands again, muttering half-finished apologies that only fueled the fury of the women he had betrayed, while crew members discreetly slid microphones closer to capture every trembling word because the network executives watching the live feed knew this was the kind of scandal that would dominate headlines for weeks. And as the shouting subsided for a brief moment, Rashida turned to the camera with a cold, determined stare and declared that she would not be humiliated any longer, vowing to get full legal custody of her children and file for divorce before the week was over. A statement that drew immediate cheers from fans following the live leaks online. Hashtags like #ByKirk and #TripleLife trending alongside raw video clips of the confrontation. But just as the energy began to settle, a sharp knock rattled the front door again, freezing the room in stunned silence as everyone turned to see a courier holding yet another manila envelope. This one marked confidential paternity results, and as the producer signed for the delivery and carefully placed the envelope on the coffee table, the tension rose to a near unbearable pitch. Rashida demanding to know which child this test concerned, Tasha clutching her twins protectively, Monique narrowing her eyes as if expecting yet another twist, while Kirk remained seated with his head bowed and a barely audible whisper escaping his lips, "I can't do this anymore," a confession that only deepened the suspense as the cameras captured every trembling hand reaching toward the envelope that promised to confirm or shatter what little remained of trust in the Frost household. The courier's envelope lay like a live wire on the table, its stark black lettering daring anyone to touch it while the cameras zoomed so close that the sound of Rashida's heartbeat seemed to echo in the heavy silence. And after a long, tense moment, she finally reached forward, her fingers trembling as she tore the seal, unfolding the crisp white pages inside as everyone leaned in to catch the first glimpse of the truth that could either end the nightmare or deepen it beyond imagination. But before she could read a single word, Kirk suddenly lurched forward, snatching the papers from her grasp and clutching them to his chest as he shouted, "Not like this. Not in front of everybody," his voice breaking with a raw desperation that made the room erupt into a storm of shouts as Rashida screamed for the results. Tasha demanded her own copy, and Monique stepped closer with the baby still asleep against her chest, her eyes narrowing in silent accusation. Until finally, the producer intervened with a firm order for Kirk to hand over the papers or risk breaching his contract. And after a long, trembling pause, he slowly released them into Rashida's waiting hands, the cameras catching every flicker of emotion across her face as she scanned the first lines, her lips parting in disbelief before she read aloud the words that sent the room into chaos. Probability of paternity 99.9%. A declaration that confirmed Kirk as the father of Monique's baby while leaving one more shocking twist in the fine print. A second result buried at the bottom of the page stating that another test, conducted quietly weeks earlier, proved that Kirk was also the father of a child born to an Asiatin-named mother. A revelation that set off an uproar of gasps and frantic questions as Rashida staggered back with tears streaming down her cheeks. Tasha clutched her twins with a look of bitter triumph, and Monique demanded to know who else Kirk had deceived. While Kirk tried to explain in a halting voice that the unnamed mother was someone from his past who had resurfaced unexpectedly, an admission that only deepened the fury as Rashida hurled the papers across the room and shouted that he had not only betrayed her but endangered their entire family with his recklessness, prompting Kendra to step between them as producers scrambled to keep the confrontation from turning physical. Yet the chaos only grew when one of the crew members, holding a phone to his ear, announced that social media was exploding with a new leak claiming the mysterious mother was a close family friend. A rumor that sent Rashida into another wave of disbelief as she demanded names. Kirk, shaking his head in defeat as he whispered a single name too low for the cameras to catch. A whisper that made Rashida's eyes widen with fresh shock before she turned away and covered her mouth, refusing to repeat what she had just heard. While the cast members exchanged frantic glances and the crew huddled to decide whether to press him on camera. But before anyone could speak, another piercing sound shattered the tension, the unmistakable cry of a newborn coming from the hallway, every eye toward the door as a young woman stepped hesitantly into the room, her hospital bracelet still on her wrist and a swaddled infant in her arms. A figure so unexpected that even the seasoned production staff froze mid-motion, their mouths falling open as the woman quietly said, "Kirk, you need to tell them, I'm not here to cause trouble, I just want you to meet your daughter." A single sentence that detonated like a bomb inside the Frost household, sending Rashida into a silent collapse onto the nearest couch while Kirk's legs gave way beneath him, his head dropping into his hands as the room filled with overlapping shouts, frantic camera flashes, and the deafening roar of a family and fanbase finally confronting the full extent of a scandal that seemed to have no bottom. The newborn's cry still hung in the air as the young woman stepped farther into the living room, every movement filmed an unforgiving close-up while the cast members stared as though a ghost had entered the house. And even the seasoned camera operators seemed to forget their marks as the infant gave a soft whimper that cut through the layers of argument like a blade, making Rashida clutch her chest and whisper a prayer under her breath while Kirk slowly rose to his feet, his face a mix of shock, fear, and a dawning resignation that told everyone watching he could no longer run from the truth. "Kirk, please," the woman said, her voice shaking but clear. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I just couldn't keep hiding. She deserves to know her father." The baby shifted in her arms, tiny fingers stretching toward the harsh studio lights, and the room erupted in overlapping shouts as Tasha stepped forward demanding to know when this latest secret relationship had begun. Monique tightened her grip on her own child and accused Kirk of living for separate lives. And Rashida, her voice breaking but still razor-sharp, asked the question that froze everyone mid-breath. "How many more children are there, Kirk? How many more lies?" Kirk opened his mouth but no sound came out, the silence stretching so long that one of the producers whispered into his headset for someone to prompt a response. Yet before he could speak, the young woman broke down in tears, confessing that Kirk had met her during a music conference nearly a year ago and had promised to make things right once his divorce was final. A revelation that sent a fresh wave of gasps through the room as Rashida turned away, covering her face, while Kendra rubbed her back and murmured that no one deserved this level of betrayal. Social media, already in frenzy, detonated with new hashtags, #4thbaby, #FrostCollapse, while live comments flooded the network feed demanding immediate DNA confirmation, and the producers, sensing a ratings goal, announced on camera that a second testing kit was already on site, prompting cheers and jeers from the gathered cast as a crew member rushed forward with the sealed packet. Kirk, visibly shaking, tried to stop the process by pleading for privacy, but Rashida snapped back with a cold "Privacy, after all of this," and seized the kit from the crew member's hands, her resolve hardening into a public vow that every child in the room would have answers before the night was over. Tasha clapped sarcastically. Monique muttered that she had warned Kirk this day would come, and the new mother, still unnamed to the audience, stood silently rocking the baby as tears streaked her cheeks, the infant's small cries mixing with the buzz of camera equipment and the sharp, unrelenting commentary from cast members who could barely contain their disbelief. One by one, the women began to list Kirk's past denials, each accusation a dagger that made him flinch while the cameras caught every flicker of guilt crossing his face. "You said the twins were a mistake," Tasha snapped. "You told me you loved me," Monique shot back. "You swore you were done with side families," Rashida added, her voice icy. The room became a swirl of overlapping voices until the producer clapped loudly for order, instructing Kirk to sit for an on-camera statement. Slowly, almost mechanically, he lowered himself into the chair, his eyes glassy under the lights as he admitted that fear of losing his image and the empire he had built on it had driven him to hide each new relationship instead of confronting the wreckage he was creating. His confession only inflamed the women further, Tasha calling him a coward, Monique accusing him of manipulating their hopes, Rashida whispering that she no longer recognized the man she married. Outside, news vans began to gather, their headlights flashing through the windows as paparazzi shouted questions. And inside, the tension built toward another inevitable explosion when a crew assistant burst in waving a phone and announced that a live stream from a hospital across town showed yet another woman claiming to be carrying Kirk's child. A final twist that made even the hardened production team gasp aloud as the screen cut to a breaking news banner, promising more revelations before the night was through. A sudden blast of phone alerts echoed through the crowded set as crew members and cast scrambled to check their screens, the hospital live stream flickering onto a nearby monitor just as the room erupted in a chorus of gasps. And there on the shaky feed stood a young nurse holding a microphone, introducing a heavily pregnant woman seated in a hospital gown with a calm defiance that silenced even the most vocal critics. Inside the Frost household, "My name is Serena," the woman said, her voice steady despite the swirl of flashing cameras around her. "And Kirk Frost is the father of my unborn child. He knows it. He signed the prenatal papers. I'm done being a secret." The declaration rippled through the room like an electrical surge. Rashida staggered against the couch, Kendra clutching her shoulders for support while Tasha shouted that this had gone beyond scandal into criminal deception. Monique, eyes blazing, demanded to know how long Kirk had been supporting Serena in silence. Kirk's mouth opened in a dry stammer as he tried to explain that the pregnancy had been a complicated situation from a brief separation, but his words were drowned out by the overlapping fury of the women he had betrayed. The young mother with the newborn shifted uneasily, whispering that she feared for her child's future, while the twins began to cry in unison, their wails rising with the tension until even the hardened producers looked shaken. Social media detonated again. Hashtags, #baby5 and #KirkExposed, vaulting to the top of trending lists within minutes as millions of viewers demanded live DNA tests and legal action. The producer stepped forward to announce that Serena was being escorted to the set under security detail and would arrive within the hour for an on-camera confrontation. Cameras caught Kirk's knees buckle at the announcement, his face pale beneath the bright lights as he muttered that he needed water. Rashida, regaining a fierce composure, cut through the noise with a chilling ultimatum: "No more lies. Kirk. Tonight every test gets done, or you walk out of here alone." The room erupted in applause from cast members who had turned from stunned observers to a chorus of supporters rallying behind Rashida's demand. Outside, news helicopters circled, their spotlights sweeping across the Frost mansion as paparazzi shouted questions through megaphones. Inside, the women formed a tense semicircle around Kirk, each holding a child or a test kit as though preparing for battle. The cameras zoomed in on his trembling hands while he whispered fragmented excuses. "I was scared. I didn't want to lose everything. I thought I could fix it before it got this far," but the words rang hollow against the hard reality of 4 confirmed children, 1 unborn, and a televised reckoning that had already shattered whatever image of control he once projected. A sudden knock at the back door startled everyone, and a security guard ushered in a hospital courier, carrying a chilled container marked DNA priority, confirming that Serena had authorized a rush test even before arriving. Gasps echoed as the courier handed over the package, the producer announcing that results would be ready within minutes thanks to an on-site lab set up for the live broadcast. Rashida seized the envelope and held it aloft like a trophy, her voice ringing clear as she vowed that every lie would end tonight. Kirk sank deeper into his chair, eyes fixed on the floor as flashes from the cameras reflected off his wedding ring, a small glint of metal now heavy with the weight of 5 different futures colliding in one unforgettable night. The roar of helicopters outside merged with the frantic hum of whispered conversations as the back door opened again and Serena finally stepped inside, her hospital gown hidden beneath a long gray coat, while 2 security guards flanked her against the crush of cameras and flashing lights, and the room fell into a tense silence broken only by the faint squeak of her shoes across the polished floor as she approached the semicircle of women already gathered like a living indictment against Kirk, whose trembling hands gripped the edge of the coffee table as though it were the only thing keeping him upright. And when Serena's eyes locked on his, the entire set seemed to hold its breath. Every camera trained on the moment as she pulled a folded document from her coat pocket and placed it on the table with deliberate calm, saying in a low, steady voice that these were the prenatal agreements he had signed at the clinic months ago, a single sheet of paper that carried more weight than all of his frantic explanations combined. And as Rashida scanned the signatures, her jaw tightened, the betrayal etched deeper into her expression with every passing second while Tasha leaned forward to point at the dates, proving that Kirk had been seeing Serena during the same period he was publicly vowing to rebuild his marriage. A revelation that sent a ripple of shocked gasps across the set and drove the studio audience outside into a frenzy of chants calling for Rashida to leave him once and for all, their voices echoing through the open windows like a relentless chorus of judgment. Yet before Kirk could utter a single defense, Serena calmly added that the hospital courier had already delivered the DNA swabs from her unborn child to the on-site lab and that preliminary results were expected within the hour. A statement that made the producers nearly leap with excitement while Rashida, her voice sharp and cold, announced that she would wait every second necessary to see those results live on camera, prompting cheers from cast members who had shifted from stunned witnesses to active supporters of her defiance. And as Kirk lowered his head in defeat, the tension was pierced by the sudden buzz of a phone on the coffee table, the screen flashing with an incoming call from an unknown number that Serena urged him to answer. But when he reluctantly put the call on speaker, the voice that filled the room was not a stranger's but that of a man claiming to be Serena's ex, declaring that Kirk was not the only possible father and warning that a second test might reveal yet another twist, a revelation that sent Monique into a fit of frustrated laughter and Rashida into a quiet fury as she accused Kirk of dragging them all into a spiral of public humiliation that now involved strangers beyond their control. While Serena stood her ground, insisting that the paperwork and timelines spoke for themselves and that no ex-boyfriend could change the fact that Kirk had been present at every appointment and had even chosen the baby's name during a late-night hospital visit, a detail that broke through the noise and sent a visible shiver through Rashida as she remembered the nights Kirk claimed to be stuck in late studio sessions. And while the cameras captured every flicker of pain on her face, social media exploded once more with hashtags like #Namegate and #StudioLies. Millions of viewers refreshing feeds for live updates as the Frost Mansion became the epicenter of a scandal so sprawling that news outlets across the country cut into programming for special coverage. Helicopters circling lower until their spotlights bathed the house in an almost theatrical glow that turned the unfolding drama into a real-time spectacle. And inside the living room, the producer raised a hand for quiet as a technician hurried in holding a sealed silver envelope from the on-site lab, announcing that the preliminary DNA results for Serena's unborn child were ready. The declaration instantly silencing every voice as the cameras zoomed so close they caught the subtle tremor in Rashida's hands and the twitch of Kirk's jaw while Serena exhaled slowly, her eyes locked on the envelope that promised to end weeks of secrecy or ignite an entirely new chapter of chaos. And as the technician placed it on the table, the tension reached a suffocating peak, every breath in the room sinking to the rhythm of an unseen countdown as Rashida finally leaned forward, tore open the seal, and began to read the first line aloud with a voice that quivered between rage and heartbreak, the single sentence hanging in the charged air as the nation waited for the verdict that would decide whether Kirk Frost's already crumbling empire had finally reached the point of no return. The cameras caught a new wave of chaos as production rolled late into the night, every creak of the studio floor echoing like a warning before the next round of confessions and confrontations. And the tension around Kirk's private dealings thickened until it felt as if the air itself might split. Jasmine's sudden reappearance with a secret envelope sparked whispers that raced through the crew faster than any scripted plot twist, while Rashida, holding a calm face for the flashing lights, clutched her phone behind her back where a string of unseen messages kept vibrating with updates from a source inside Kirk's circle. And though she tried to stand steady, her mind replayed the countless evenings of public smiles and private betrayals that had already turned their marriage into a headline machine, each memory sharpening her resolve to claim the final word. Meanwhile, Mendices, still carrying the bruises of their earlier scuffle, paced along the hallway with a restless energy that matched the humming cameras, muttering to a producer about deals gone wrong and alliances shifting by the hour, his eyes fixed on the door where Kirk was expected to enter with a grin that never quite reached his eyes. And as crew members adjusted mics and wiped sweat from their brows, the studio became a pressure cooker of half-truths, petty vendettas, and contracts that promised drama but never guaranteed peace. until even the security guards leaned forward as if the next sound might be the one to tip the night into total madness. Then came the moment no one planned when Kendra stepped into the frame wearing a dress that shimmered like a dare, her hand resting on her stomach just long enough to ignite a storm of speculation, and within seconds the rumor of a pregnancy spread from camera operators to social feeds to the waiting fans outside who screamed through the glass as if sheer volume might break the mystery open, while Kirk, cornered by flashing lights and hungry questions, gave a smile so thin it might as well have been a crack in a mask, his voice low and deliberate as he denied nothing yet confirmed everything with a single shrug that only fueled the frenzy. Jasmine, refusing to be outdone, produced a second envelope, marked with Kirk's own handwriting, a silent accusation that sent producers scrambling to capture every flicker of reaction as Rashida's eyes narrowed and Mendices stepped closer, his jaw tightening at the sight of fresh evidence that threatened to redraw every alliance on the set. And still the cameras rolled without mercy, catching every twitch of a lip and every nervous glance until the studio lights felt hotter than the August streets outside. Outside the building, fans refreshed their feeds, and bloggers drafted headlines in real time, each new leak feeding a digital wildfire that turned private heartbreak into global entertainment. And by the time the crew called for a temporary break, the story had already outgrown the walls of the show, spilling into podcasts, gossip channels, and late-night radio with wild claims that Kirk's empire of half-hidden relationships was not only real but far more tangled than even the most devoted viewers had imagined. Yet inside the studio, the players kept moving like pieces on a board they could no longer control, driven by the knowledge that every word, every glance, every carefully staged silence would echo across screens by morning. And as Rashida finally stepped forward to face Kirk with a voice steady enough to slice through the noise, the crowd of onlookers fell silent, sensing that the next breath might carry the revelation that would change the narrative forever. A single sentence capable of turning rumor into legend, while the cameras, unblinking and merciless, captured the raw spectacle of love, betrayal, and ambition collapsing into the kind of unscripted reality that no producer could ever truly invent. The lights stayed blisteringly hot as midnight crept across the studio clock and no one dared look away from the unfolding spectacle, because every breath from Kirk, Rashida, Jasmine, Mendices, and Kendra felt like a live fuse burning toward an explosion that might take the entire production with it. And while the audience at home refreshed their feeds for leaks, inside the soundstage the tension reached a fever pitch, with makeup artists frozen in place and camera operators whispering frantic updates into their headsets as Kirk strode back into the center of the set, with a swagger that looked rehearsed but carried a twitch of unease, the kind that betrays a man balancing too many secrets at once. His eyes darting from Rashida's cold stare to Jasmine's sly smile to Kendra's unreadable calm. And somewhere in the shadows, a producer mouthed silent prayers that the next words would be explosive but not catastrophic, because ratings were priceless but lawsuits could shut down the entire season. Yet none of the players seemed to care about contracts anymore, not when old grudges and buried truths pressed against their throats like a rising tide. Rashida broke the silence first, her voice steady but sharpened by years of betrayal, calling Kirk by his full name in a tone that made even the boom operators flinch. And with each syllable she laid out a timeline of late-night disappearances, unexplained bank transfers, and private messages intercepted by fans who had nothing but time and sharp eyes. Every revelation backed by screenshots that flickered across the giant monitors like evidence in a courtroom. And as the crew struggled to keep their composure, the crowd behind the glass erupted into a chorus of gasps that shook the studio walls, while Kirk stood motionless except for the tightening of his jaw, a man aware that every camera angle captured the exact moment his carefully built persona began to crumble. Jasmine stepped closer, her voice dripping with a confidence that came from holding not just one but several more sealed envelopes, each allegedly containing proof of secret rendezvous, hush money agreements, and hotel receipts stretching back years. Her every word timed to the heartbeat of the cameras until the entire space seemed to pulse with anticipation. And though Kirk tried to cut her off with a dismissive wave, the microphones caught the tremor in his fingers and the slight catch in his throat, feeding the live gossip streams already labeling the night the collapse of Kirk Frost as if the entire world were waiting for a single final blow. Mendices, never one to remain silent when the chance for confrontation presented itself, stepped into the fray with a booming challenge, accusing Kirk of staging fights for ratings while hiding deeper betrayals that went beyond mere affairs. His accusations laced with insider knowledge that hinted at financial schemes, ghost deals with producers, and side contracts that funneled money away from the main cast, each claim more incendiary than the last until security guards shifted nervously and producers, gestured wildly for the cameras to keep rolling, knowing that the unscripted chaos had turned into television gold. Kendra, who had remained silent through the storm, finally placed a hand on her stomach again, sending another shockwave through the crowd as she revealed, in a voice calm as midnight, that her pregnancy was no longer a rumor but a fact, her words slicing through the overlapping shouts like a blade. And for a heartbeat, the entire room fell into an eerie silence, broken only by the faint hum of the overhead lights. The gravity of her confession sinking in as Rashida's face tightened and Kirk's carefully maintained grin dissolved into a blank mask of panic. A look captured from every angle by cameras that refused to blink. The audience outside screamed, phones raised high to catch the moment for their own feeds. While inside the studio, the air grew thick with the scent of sweat and adrenaline as producers scrambled to plan the next day's marketing. Blitzed around revelations they hadn't dared to script, each leak feeding a digital wildfire that threatened to consume not only Kirk's reputation but the fragile alliances holding the entire show together. Yet even as the chaos mounted, Kirk squared his shoulders and stepped forward with a speech that tried to reclaim control, promising to tell his side in a special episode that would expose what he called the real truth, a phrase that only fueled the frenzy as fans online debated whether he meant hidden contracts, secret children, or betrayals still lurking in the wings. And as the final minutes of filming ticked away, the cast stood locked in a tableau of suspicion and defiance, their faces illuminated by the relentless glow of the cameras that would carry this night across every screen by morning, sealing their fates as players in a saga of love, ambition, and scandal so vivid that even the most jaded viewers would swear no writer could have imagined it. The studio lights felt hotter than ever as dawn bled through the high windows, a thin pale glow mixing with the harsh stage bulbs that had burned all night while Kirk, Rashida, Jasmine, Mendices, and Kendra stood locked in a standoff that no producer could have scripted, each heartbeat echoing across the polished floor, like the countdown to a detonation as fans outside the barricades chanted for answers, their voices rising in a frenzy that rivaled a stadium crowd. And inside the soundstage, every movement carried the weight of years of deception, ambition, and broken trust, with Kirk pacing in slow circles while camera operators followed his every twitch, capturing the micro-expressions of a man whose empire of charm now threatened to collapse. Beneath the combined pressure of 3 women, 2 weddings, and countless whispered rumors, Rashida, arms crossed but eyes blazing, began to recite in chilling detail the late-night calls she had traced, the hotel receipts she had verified through fan-run sleuth accounts, and the digital breadcrumbs that led to apartments Kirk had allegedly rented under aliases, her voice a controlled storm that cut through the frantic whispers of crew members who could barely keep their equipment steady, and every revelation felt like a hammer strike, each date and location matching online leaks that fans were already reposting to millions before the words had finished echoing through the cavernous set. While Kirk's attempts to interject with half-hearted denials only fed the crowd's appetite for more, their chants of receipts, rattling the glass of the observation booth where producers scrambled to draft emergency statements. Jasmine seized the pause with a sly step forward, her smile carrying the sharp edge of triumph as she waved a thick envelope of documents and announced that inside were paternity test results, hotel surveillance stills, and even voice messages that proved Kirk had promised her a secret future long before his televised vows to Rashida. And as she spoke, the tension in the room tightened like a drawn wire, every syllable amplified by the boom mics until the smallest intake of breath from the cast sounded like thunder. While Kendra, standing slightly apart, placed a deliberate hand on her own stomach and quietly declared that the child she carried bore Kirk's name as well, a revelation that struck like a lightning bolt through the crew and audience alike, sending camera operators into frantic repositioning as fans outside screamed so loudly the audio feed briefly clipped. Mendices, never one to let a confrontation pass without escalation, stepped between the women with a raised finger pointed at Kirk, accusing him not only of personal betrayals but of manipulating contracts, hiding sponsorship money, and staging fake reconciliations for profit, each allegation heavier than the last until even the hardened producers exchanged nervous glances, wondering how much legal fallout would follow once the unedited footage reached the network lawyers. And still Kirk refused to retreat, lifting his chin with a defiant glare as he proclaimed that every relationship, every deal, and every secret was part of a grand plan to secure his family's future, a phrase that only deepened the mystery and sent the live chat feeds into overdrive with theories ranging from hidden trust funds to offshore marriages. Rashida's response came like a whip crack, her voice rising over the din as she demanded to know how many other children, how many hidden bank accounts, and how many shadow weddings still lay buried behind Kirk's carefully curated image. And though Kirk tried to deflect with charm, the strain in his voice betrayed a man cornered by the very spectacle he had once controlled. Each deflection met with a chorus of gasps from the crew who could no longer tell where the reality show ended and real life began. While Jasmine brandished a phone displaying a blurry but unmistakable courthouse photo that hinted at a second marriage license filed under a thinly disguised alias, a revelation that sent another shockwave through the audience as Rashida's jaw tightened and Kendra's calm expression cracked just enough to reveal the storm beneath. The camera zoomed tighter, capturing every flicker of fear, rage, and calculation on Kirk's face as he finally exhaled a trembling breath and began to speak, his words a mix of confession and justification that tumbled out in a rapid stream, claiming that love, business, and survival had forced him into choices no one could understand. That every secret wedding and whispered affair had been part of a desperate attempt to keep his family protected from forces he hinted were far larger than fame or money, his cryptic language igniting fresh speculation that powerful industry figures had played a role in the labyrinth of betrayals now unraveling live on camera. Outside the barricades, the crowd roared with every new revelation, phones raised high, as if to catch not just the words but the electric charge of the night itself. While inside the set, the crew worked with silent urgency to capture every angle of the implosion, their lenses drinking in the sweat glistening on foreheads, the trembling hands, the darting eyes. Because they knew this footage would replay for months across every gossip feed and late-night recap, ensuring that the name Kirk Frost would remain etched in pop culture history as the man whose tangled loves and secret lives turned one night of filming into an event that shattered records and left even the most jaded fans wondering how much more remained hidden beneath the surface. Security guards tightened their circle as the roar from outside grew louder, a steady chant of Kirk's name mixed with cries of outrage and disbelief. And inside the studio, the temperature seemed to rise with every passing second while Kirk stood in the center of the chaos like a figure carved from defiance, his eyes flicking between Rashida's icy stare and Jasmine's triumphant smirk as if trying to calculate which fire to extinguish first. Though each second of hesitation only fanned the flames of suspicion that now threatened to swallow the entire production. Rashida, refusing to yield the floor, advanced another step and unleashed a torrent of accusations drawn from years of quiet observation, recounting late-night texts she had intercepted, bank statements with unexplained transfers, and whispers from stylists and makeup artists who had seen more than they dared repeat. Her voice slicing through the overlapping shouts until even the camera operators froze, aware that every word carried the weight of potential legal battles and broken contracts. While Jasmine punctuated each revelation with nods and pointed looks, silently daring Kirk to deny what everyone now felt was undeniable, and Kendra, still clutching her stomach with a mix of pride and fear, finally broke her silence with a steady voice that cut through the noise, declaring that she would no longer hide the truth of her pregnancy, or the years of promises Kirk had whispered behind closed doors, her calm confession sending another shockwave through the room as producers exchanged frantic glances over the growing risk of defamation claims, yet none dared interrupt the spectacle unfolding before them. Mendices seized the moment with his trademark bravado, striding toward Kirk with a booming challenge that accused him not only of betraying the women in his life but of engineering entire storylines to manipulate fan reactions and secure higher payouts from the network. His words landing like body blows as the crowd outside roared in approval, their chants vibrating through the studio walls and into the cameras that captured every twitch of Kirk's tightening jaw. And though Kirk attempted to regain control with a measured explanation about business decisions and family strategies, his voice cracked under the relentless pressure, betraying the panic simmering just beneath his polished surface. Rashida countered with a revelation so shocking that even the seasoned producers gasped, producing a notarized document that appeared to show Kirk had filed for a marriage license in another state under a barely altered alias, a paper trail that suggested not just infidelity but bigamy. And as the crew scrambled to zoom in on the evidence, fans on live streams erupted with theories and grabs, turning the night into an internet wildfire that spread faster than the studio could control, while Jasmine added fuel by revealing she possessed a secret audio recording of Kirk, allegedly promising lifelong support for all three of his children, a tape she claimed would air if he continued to deny the truth. The tension reached a fever pitch as Kendra quietly whispered something to Rashida, A brief exchange caught by a stray microphone that hinted at a hidden alliance forming in real time. A potential partnership between former rivals united by betrayal. And though their words were barely audible, the subtle nods and shared glares spoke volumes, sending the live chat into a frenzy of speculation about a joint plan to take control of the narrative and expose Kirk's every hidden move. Kirk, sensing the shifting tide, attempted one last grand gesture, raising his arms to silence the room as he declared that love, loyalty and survival had driven every decision he had ever made. That he had married twice, not out of malice but out of a desperate need to protect the people he cared for from forces he refused to name, a cryptic plea that only deepened the mystery and left the audience hungry for answers. Yet before he could elaborate, the studio doors burst open and a courier stepped inside holding a thick envelope marked with the network's logo, delivering an urgent legal notice that froze everyone in place. The sight of official paperwork sending a ripple of fear through cast and crew alike as they realized the night's revelations had already reached executives far beyond the soundstage. The cameras captured every second of the stunned silence that followed, from Kirk's trembling hands as he accepted the envelope to Rashida's triumphant half-smile and Jasmine's barely contained laughter. And though no one yet knew the contents, the implications were clear. The network had seized control of the chaos. And the next move would determine not only the future of the show but the fates of every person standing beneath those relentless studio lights. A cliffhanger so potent that fans across the globe refreshed their screens in unison, desperate for the next leak, the next gasp, the next twist in a saga that had already redefined the boundaries of reality television and left even its most seasoned players stunned by the sheer scale of Kirk Frost's unraveling. Crew members who had survived years of on-camera meltdowns said later that nothing compared to the points of silence that followed the delivery of that envelope. A silence so heavy it seemed to press against the eardrums until the faint buzz of the stage lights felt deafening. And while Kirk stared at the bold network logo as if it might burn through his hands, Rashida seized the moment to step forward, her heels clicking against the floor with the finality of a gavel, her voice measured but merciless as she announced to the cameras that she would no longer shield a man who had built an empire on deception, that the fans who had supported them deserved unfiltered truth. And each carefully chosen word cut through the tension like a blade, prompting a fresh eruption of cheers from the crowd outside, their chants now transforming into a unified demand for disclosure as live stream comments scrolled so fast they blurred into a wall of flashing color. Jasmine, feeding on the energy, leaned in with a theatrical sigh and revealed that the paternity results she carried were not the only bombshell in her possession, claiming that hidden within her phone were recorded conversations between Kirk and a shadowy industry insider discussing payouts to keep certain relationships quiet, a revelation that sent a visible shiver through the crew and forced security to tighten their perimeter as fans began pounding on the glass in disbelief, while Kendra, who had until now balanced calm with quiet strength, finally raised her voice to declare that she too had kept receipts, that text messages stretching back years contained promises of secret vacations, hidden trusts, and a life that would never be public, each detail delivered with the cool precision of someone who had waited far too long to be heard. Kirk attempted to counter with a speech about loyalty and family legacy, but his words cracked under the roar of the audience as Mendices cut him off with an accusation that turned every head in the room, alleging that Kirk had not only manipulated the women in his life, but had brokered covert side deals with producers to leak selective scandals in exchange for higher appearance fees. A charge so explosive that even the hardened camera operators exchanged stunned glances while scrambling to keep their focus sharp. The courier who had delivered the envelope remained frozen near the door until a producer urged Kirk to open it on camera, a suggestion that sent another ripple of anticipation through the set as the cast gathered in a tense semicircle, their faces illuminated by the relentless studio lights that caught every flicker of sweat and every twitch of suppressed emotion. And when Kirk finally tore the seal, the air itself seemed to tighten. The sound of ripping paper, amplified by the silence until it felt like the very fabric of the show was tearing with it, revealing a formal notice from network executives announcing an emergency suspension of filming and an immediate investigation into allegations of bigamy, fraud, and breach of contract. A document that effectively ended the night's shoot while ensuring the chaos would spill far beyond the studio walls. Fans watching the live stream exploded in real time, hashtags multiplying by the second as theories flooded every corner of social media, some insisting that Kirk had staged the entire spectacle for a multi-million-dollar spin-off, others convinced that the network itself had engineered the reveal to dominate ratings. And inside the studio, the cast reacted with a volatile mix of triumph, fury, and raw disbelief, with Rashida exchanging a knowing glance with Kendra that hinted at a new alliance forming in the wreckage, Jasmine lifting her chin, as if daring the cameras to follow her next move, and Mendices pacing like a prizefighter waiting for the bell, while Kirk remained rooted in place, the envelope dangling from his fingers as if the weight of every secret, every marriage license, every whispered promise had finally settled onto his shoulders. Producers whispered frantic instructions into headsets, trying to corral the chaos into something usable for broadcast. But the scene had slipped beyond their control as the crowd outside began to chant for a live press conference, their voices swelling until the glass walls vibrated like a drum. And somewhere deep within the studio, a power surge flickered the lights, plunging the set into a brief darkness that drew a collective gasp before the bulbs blazed back to life, casting the players in a stark glow that felt less like television and more like Judgment Day, a moment so charged that even the most jaded crew members admitted later they forgot to breathe, knowing they were witnessing not just the implosion of a reality show but the public unmasking of a man whose tangled loves and calculated betrayals had finally caught up with him in front of millions. The network's emergency suspension order was supposed to end the night, yet the soundstage refused to quiet, a pressure cooker of raw emotion and flashing lights where every glance carried the charge of a live wire and every second threatened to ignite another explosion of scandal. And though producers begged for calm, their voices were swallowed by the roar of the fans outside, a relentless chant that pounded against the glass like a storm at sea, demanding answers that none of the players were willing to give. Not yet. Because even as Kirk clutched the network's envelope with trembling hands, he refused to surrender the spotlight, stepping forward into the camera's harsh glow with the defiance of a man who knew that silence would mean defeat, his jaw tight and his eyes burning as he declared that no contract, no legal notice, no social media mob could silence the truth he had carried for years, a truth he claimed would expose not only his own tangled relationships but the hidden machinations of the industry itself. And as his words echoed across the cavernous set, a strange hush settled over the crew, a collective intake of breath as everyone sensed that the night's greatest revelation was still to come. Rashida's gaze never wavered as she demanded specifics, her voice sharp enough to cut through the thick air as she accused Kirk of using vague promises of a grand plan to distract from the reality of 2 wives, 3 babies, and an ocean of lies, while Jasmine tilted her head with a knowing smirk, her phone raised high to capture every syllable for the millions already refreshing their feeds. And Kendra stepped closer with a quiet strength that belied the storm inside her, reminding Kirk in a steady, resonant tone that every child deserved to know the truth, regardless of contracts or ratings. A statement that drew cheers from the crowd outside and a sudden surge of comments across live streams worldwide. Kirk inhaled sharply, the sound caught by a boom mic and amplified into the tense silence, and then began to speak with a measured cadence that betrayed the weight of carefully guarded secrets, admitting that he had indeed married twice but insisting that each marriage was bound by love rather than betrayal, that circumstances, beyond the comprehension of outsiders, had forced him into choices no one could judge without knowing the full story, a story he promised to reveal in a tell-all special that would shock the culture and change the game. And as he spoke, the crew exchanged incredulous glances while social media feeds erupted in all-caps reactions, hashtags multiplying like sparks from a live wire. Mendices, unwilling to let Kirk seize the narrative, stormed forward with an accusatory finger and shouted that Kirk's confession was nothing more than a calculated play to secure a spin-off deal, that every shocking twist of the night had been staged to squeeze another season of chaos from a fanbase addicted to scandal. And though producers rushed to hush him, the damage was done. The accusation hanging in the charged air as fans online split into warring factions over whether Kirk was a master manipulator or a victim of a ruthless network, hungry for ratings. Rashida seized the pause to unleash her own revelation, announcing that she had already filed legal motions to protect her assets and that new evidence bank records, private emails, and surveillance footage would soon prove that Kirk's empire had been built on more than love and ambition. That hidden accounts and offshore transfers traced a pattern of deceit that stretched far beyond the affairs splashed across tabloids, and her words sent a shiver through the crew as camera operators scrambled to capture her every expression, knowing that the footage would dominate gossip shows and late-night monologues for weeks to come. Jasmine, unwilling to be outdone, stepped forward with a dramatic flourish and revealed that she possessed a hidden audio file allegedly capturing Kirk in a meeting with network executives where he pitched the idea of a double marriage twist as a ratings stunt. A claim so explosive that even the hardened producers froze, eyes wide as they calculated the legal and financial fallout of such an admission, while Kendra placed both hands protectively over her stomach and declared that whatever games the adults chose to play, she would fight for the safety and dignity of her child. Her calm defiance drawing a wave of applause from both the studio audience and the thousands watching live across the world. The tension tightened like a coiled spring as Kirk, visibly shaken, dropped the network envelope and raised his hands in a plea for silence, insisting that forces far greater than any of them were at work, hinting at shadowy industry players, secret deals, and threats to his family that had forced him into desperate measures, his cryptic warnings igniting a fresh storm of speculation across social media as fans spun theories involving powerful executives, hidden contracts, and a conspiracy to control reality television itself. And as the cameras captured every flicker of emotion on his face, the night stretched toward dawn with no resolution in sight. Only the relentless hum of studio lights, the pounding chants of the crowd outside, and the unshakable sense that this scandal, 2 wives, 3 babies, and a labyrinth of betrayal had only begun to reveal its darkest layers. As the aftershocks of the Kirk-Jasmine double pregnancy revelation rippled across every corner of the reality TV universe, the set of the reunion special became an improvised war zone of emotions and camera flashes, a place where whispered grudges and buried betrayals finally clawed their way into the open with the force of a breaking dam. And while producers scrambled to maintain a veneer of control, the cast members treated the studio floor like an arena where reputations could be rebuilt or destroyed in the span of a single shouted sentence. Kendra swept in wearing a gown that glittered like liquid silver under the harsh production lights, her entrance timed to the second to maximize the thunder of gasps from the audience, and she carried herself with the calm of someone who knew that every lens in the building had already locked onto her every move. But before she could even take her seat, Mendices shot up from his chair and hurled a string of accusations that cracked through the room like a whip, claiming that Kirk had been secretly funneling gifts and late-night visits toward Jasmine long after the cameras were supposed to have stopped rolling, and the crowd erupted with a roar so loud it rattled the metal trusses above, forcing security to form a human barricade as producers screamed into their headsets to keep the live feed from cutting to black. Meanwhile, Kirk attempted a half-hearted defense, his words drowned by the sheer volume of overlapping shouts from Rashida, who demanded to know whether the rumors about secret paternity tests were true, and Jasmine, who shot back with a calm yet lethal smile that only deepened the suspense, because her next sentence hinted at another hidden twist: a financial trail of hush money payments allegedly routed through a shell company tied to one of Kirk's oldest business partners, a revelation that sent the audience into a frenzy of disbelief, their screams mixing with the shrill alarm of a dropped microphone. And as the producers huddled behind the curtain, debating whether to cut to commercial or ride the chaos for ratings gold, Kendra seized the moment with the precision of a seasoned tactician, standing tall to announce that she too had a secret to share, her voice slicing through the noise like a clean blade as she revealed a series of text messages between Mendices and Jasmine that suggested an alliance far deeper than anyone had suspected, an alliance that, according to her, might have included late-night meetings and promises of shared custody over the unborn children. A claim so explosive that even the seasoned camera operators paused to catch their breath before zooming in on the stunned faces of the cast. And in that instant the reunion special became something larger than television, a swirling spectacle of broken loyalties and live-streamed betrayals that trended across every platform within minutes. Hashtags multiplying like wildfire as fans dissected each glance and gesture frame by frame, while sponsors quietly renegotiated contracts behind closed doors and paparazzi swarmed the parking lot in search of one more telling photograph. And as the lights burned hotter and the accusations stacked higher, Kirk, Rashida, Jasmine, Kendra, and Mendices found themselves trapped inside a story that had outgrown their control, a living rumor that would follow them long after the final credits rolled, ensuring that every whispered conversation, every late-night phone call, and every social media post would be measured against the unforgettable chaos of that single night when love, betrayal, and ambition collided in front of millions of unblinking eyes. The chaos did not cool even after the studio lights dimmed, and the last audience members were ushered out into the midnight streets, because outside the reunion venue the storm only shifted its shape, gathering around hotel lobbies, parking garages, and the glowing screens of countless live feeds where fans, bloggers, and opportunistic insiders turned every half-heard rumor into breaking news. And as Rashida and Kirk attempted to leave through a side exit shielded by bodyguards, a swarm of cameras caught a glimpse of what looked like a heated whisper between them. A fragment of conversation that sparked 1,000 theories within minutes. While Jasmine slipped into a waiting car flanked by her own security detail, her face hidden behind oversized sunglasses even though the hour was long past sunset, and Kendra emerged moments later with a slow, deliberate stride that made the photographers shout her name until the air seemed to vibrate. Yet she offered no words, only a cool glance that somehow promised more revelations to come. And behind them, Mendices lingered in the doorway with the restless energy of a man who knew the night was not yet finished. His phone buzzing non-stop, as producers pleaded for one more on-camera statement, and lawyers whispered about potential defamation claims. But inside the tightly guarded production office, a different drama unfolded as executives argued over how much raw footage to release, aware that every second of scandal carried both staggering ratings potential and the risk of legal firestorms. And even as they debated, clips began to leak through anonymous accounts that uploaded shaky backstage footage showing Kirk pacing with frantic gestures, Rashida wiping away tears of fury, and Jasmine calmly scrolling through her phone as if already planning the next calculated move. A cascade of content that flooded social media feeds, until hashtags related to the reunion consumed the top trends across multiple countries, drawing in curious viewers who had never watched a single episode of the show but now felt compelled to join the digital hunt for hidden truths. And as dawn crept over the city, gossip sites unveiled fresh claims of secret meetings between cast members and producers, alleging that some confrontations had been stoked by planted information while others erupted entirely on their own. Yet the line between orchestrated drama and raw reality blurred so completely that even the crew struggled to separate fact from performance. And in this haze of suspicion, Kirk released a late-morning statement through his publicist, insisting that the paternity rumors were baseless and that any financial transfers were purely business. A message immediately dissected by analysts who pointed out inconsistencies in his timeline, while Rashida countered with a cryptic post about loyalty and hidden truths that drew millions of likes within hours. And Jasmine fueled the fire with a silent selfie showing only a hospital bracelet and a faint shadow of an ultrasound in the background. A single image that reignited speculation about the twins and sent fans racing to match dates and details. And by mid-afternoon, Kendra escalated matters with a live video in which she revealed she had retained independent legal counsel and promised that the receipts were coming. A phrase that instantly trended worldwide and triggered a fresh wave of memes, reaction videos, and fevered predictions, until the reunion scandal transformed into a cultural earthquake that no longer belonged to the cast or the network. A runaway narrative that fed on every comment, every half-smile, every ambiguous silence, ensuring that the saga of Kirk, Rashida, Jasmine, Kendra, and Mendices would continue to dominate headlines and conversations long after the cameras stopped rolling. A story too tangled and electrifying to end, growing instead into a living legend of reality television, where the boundary between show and life dissolved in the glare of relentless attention. Even as the network scrambled to seize control of the narrative with carefully timed press releases and hastily edited exclusive teasers, the frenzy only deepened because every attempt at clarification sparked a fresh round of contradictions. And the cast themselves seemed determined to keep the pot boiling, with Kirk suddenly appearing at a late-night club event where cell phone footage caught him embracing a woman who looked alarmingly similar to the mysterious second wife mentioned in the leaked documents. A moment that detonated across fan accounts before sunrise and had bloggers stitching together timelines of his travel history with the precision of forensic investigators, while Rashida countered the spectacle by hosting an impromptu livestream from her boutique, pointedly wearing a ring on her wedding finger and speaking in calm but cutting tones about knowing your worth and protecting your peace, a performance that viewers interpreted as both a warning and a challenge. And meanwhile, Jasmine surfaced at a prenatal clinic where photographers captured her walking arm in arm with a man whose face was partially hidden by a hoodie, igniting rumors of yet another player in the tangled web of paternity debates. And Kendra, not to be outdone, released a series of cryptic audio clips on her social feed, snippets of recorded phone calls in which a male voice that many fans swore was Kirk's could be heard discussing keeping everything quiet until the paperwork clears, though lawyers for the network quickly dismissed the clips as unauthenticated, a label that only fueled suspicion rather than quelling it, while Mendices became an unexpected wildcard by granting a marathon interview to an independent podcast where he claimed to possess the real receipts but coyly refused to share them until he could protect certain innocent people, a tease that drove listeners wild and pushed the podcast to the top of the charts overnight. And as journalists chased each conflicting lead, small but significant details began to surface. like an old marriage license filed in a rural county that matched Kirk's name to a woman identified only by her initials, or a series of wired transfers linking a production assistant to a luxury apartment where one of the alleged mothers was reportedly staying. And each discovery sparked frantic debates in comments sections, where fans dissected everything from handwriting on envelopes to the reflection in background mirrors, creating a collective investigation so obsessive that even professional tabloids struggled to keep pace. And through it all, the emotional stakes for the core cast grew sharper, with Rashida reportedly collapsing in tears during a private dinner with close friends, Jasmine hinting at complications with her pregnancy that required bed rest, and Kendra escalating her legal maneuvers by filing a motion to subpoena network records, while Kirk maintained a brazen public schedule that included club appearances, radio interviews, and even a charity event where he smiled for photos as if the entire scandal were nothing more than an exaggerated storyline, a display of defiance that enraged critics and emboldened supporters who insisted he was the victim of a smear campaign. And by the end of the week, the drama had grown so vast that mainstream news outlets began running segments analyzing the cultural impact of a reality show scandal that blurred entertainment, law, and morality, with panelists debating whether the unfolding saga represented a cautionary tale of fame or a new era in which audiences participate directly in constructing the narrative. And as the cameras followed every move, the players themselves seemed to recognize that the game had outgrown them, speaking in half-truths and suggestive smiles while fans around the world waited for the next leak, the next confrontation, the next unpredictable twist in a story that refused to end and promised that the final revelation, if it ever came, would shatter everything they thought they knew about loyalty, love, and the dangerous thrill of televised secrets. The morning after the latest wave of leaked recordings, the city awoke to a spectacle that no one could have predicted, because the drama that had once belonged to a single reality TV cast had now spilled into courtrooms, radio stations, and city council meetings as journalists camped outside the courthouse where Kirk and his legal team were rumored to be filing an emergency motion to block the release of new evidence. While across town, Rashida arrived at her boutique, flanked by two close friends and a pair of private security guards, her eyes hidden behind dark lenses, but her posture radiating the kind of icy determination that fans instantly recognized as the prelude to another public declaration. And before the doors even opened, she paused to give a statement to the growing crowd of reporters, her voice calm yet edged with fury, as she announced that the truth will not be buried under lies and contracts, a phrase that ricocheted across social media within minutes, and sent online sleuths racing to decode its meaning. And as hashtags like #ToWivesTruth and #KirkDNA trended worldwide, Jasmine quietly posted a single black and white photo of a newborn's tiny hand gripping an adult finger. No caption, no location tag, only a faint hospital bracelet barely visible in the shadows. An image so loaded with implication that blogs erupted in debates about whether the child belonged to Kirk, a new partner, or someone entirely unexpected, while Kendra escalated the tension by scheduling a press conference at a downtown hotel where she arrived in a crisp white suit and, after a deliberate pause to let cameras flash, revealed that her attorneys had secured documents proving a secret marriage between Kirk and a woman identified only as a B, adding that the marriage had never been dissolved and therefore carried legal consequences for every relationship that followed, a revelation that drew gasps from the assembled media and sent producers scrambling to update their storyboards for the next televised reunion. And even as Kirk's lawyer tried to dismiss the documents as fabrications from opportunistic sources, eagle-eyed fans noticed that the signatures matched samples from Kirk's old business filings, sparking a frenzy of side-by-side image comparisons and amateur handwriting analyses. And while the adults clashed in legal and public arenas, the ripple effects struck the younger members of the extended family, with Rashida's teenage son posting a tearful livestream in which he begged viewers to stop harassing his mother and hinted that things at home are worse than anyone knows. A heartbreaking confession that trended across multiple platforms and ignited fresh criticism of the network for allowing private pain to become entertainment. Yet instead of slowing the drama, it only fed the fire, encouraging rival bloggers to release fresh leaks that included a series of voice notes allegedly exchanged between Kirk and an unnamed woman discussing financial support for the twins, a phrase that matched Jasmine's earlier claims, and set off another storm of speculation. And in the midst of this digital chaos, Mendes returned to the spotlight with a surprise appearance on a late-night talk show where he claimed that producers had known about the secret marriage all along and had quietly encouraged the cast to lean into the mess for higher ratings, a charge that the network denied in a hastily issued statement even as anonymous crew members began sharing cryptic posts, hinting that Mendices was telling the truth. And while lawyers threatened defamation suits and fans organized hashtag campaigns demanding accountability, the core cast remained locked in a tense dance of public appearances and private negotiations, with Rashida refusing to back down from her vow to expose the full timeline, Jasmine guarding the identity of her newborn's father while posting increasingly pointed captions about truth rising, and Kendra leveraging her legal findings to demand both financial settlements and airtime for her side of the story, all while Kirk continued to project a calm, almost reckless confidence by showing up at charity events and music industry parties as though the scandal were nothing more than a subplot, a performance that enraged critics, delighted supporters, and ensured that the saga of 2 wives, 3 babies, and 1 man at the center of it all would remain the most explosive reality TV narrative of the year, a living drama where every whispered secret and every silent glance promised that the next revelation could rewrite everything the audience thought they knew about loyalty, betrayal, and the dangerous price of fame. The city had become a pressure cooker of whispers and flashing lights, because the scandal that erupted around Kirk, Rashida, Hassman, Kendra, and Mendices had grown beyond the boundaries of television, spilling into social media, courthouse steps, and even the private lives of their extended families. And the morning after the latest leaks, the crew of the reality show returned to the studio with nerves frayed and adrenaline high, cameras rolling as though the chaos itself demanded documentation, while Kirk appeared first, his hair slightly disheveled, a look of controlled panic in his eyes as he strode past the crew with a whispered apology that no one could hear over the growing hum of speculation, and Rashida followed shortly after, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor, a storm contained within a composed exterior as she carried folders and documents that, according to insiders, could blow the entire network's strategy into pieces, her gaze meeting Jasmine's from across the set, a subtle tilt of the head suggesting both challenge and warning. And Jasmine, never one to surrender the spotlight, responded with a faint smile and a small wave toward the cameras, as though daring the world to interpret her calm as anything but calculated, while Kendra positioned herself strategically near the center, her posture straight and commanding, signaling that she was ready to use every ounce of evidence she had gathered to assert her position, a quiet tension building that made even seasoned crew members pause to watch, realizing that nothing could prepare them for what was about to unfold. As the cameras rolled, Mendices paced along the perimeter, occasionally stopping to whisper something to a producer, his gestures animated and urgent, hinting at information that might once again shift the balance of power on set. And then the network executive appeared, walking through the scene like a referee entering a gladiator arena, announcing that they had reviewed all leaked materials and were planning a controlled broadcast designed to address fan outrage without admitting any wrongdoing. A statement that drew simultaneous cheers and groans from the crew, who had already seen enough drama to know that control was an illusion. And while the executive detailed the plan, Kirk attempted a brief speech, assuring the audience that all allegations were being addressed in a fair and legal manner, his voice quivering slightly as he referenced love, loyalty, and family. But his words barely registered against the backdrop of whispered rumors, social media notifications, and the occasional pointed glance from Rashida and Jasmine, each glance loaded with the threat of immediate exposure of new secrets. Tensions ratcheted higher when Rashida opened her folders to reveal a series of emails allegedly exchanged between Kirk and a former producer, outlining strategies to obscure the truth about his marriages and children. A revelation that prompted Jasmine to pull out her phone and begin streaming the scene live to hundreds of thousands of viewers, the faint sound of keyboard taps from fans attempting to corroborate every detail adding to the frenetic atmosphere. And Kendra, sensing an opportunity, stepped forward to announce that her team had obtained copies of a notarized marriage certificate for Kirk and an unidentified woman, a document that, if authenticated, could legally complicate every relationship and financial agreement he had entered into since, sending a ripple of panic through Kirk, whose composure cracked for the briefest of moments before he adjusted his tie and attempted a calm smile. Though it failed to mask the sweat forming at his temples, the cast's emotional energy reached a boiling point when Mendices, taking a deep breath, accused Kirk of deliberately staging the double marriage and secret paternity as a ratings stunt, a claim so incendiary that the crew froze, unsure whether to intervene or let the confrontation play out. And the silence that followed was broken only by the faint murmur of cameras and the ever-present hum of live streaming devices capturing every micro-expression. the audience at home exploding with comments speculating on the veracity of the accusations, dissecting each line, each pause, each tilt of the head, and plotting their own theories of alliances and betrayals, while Rashida's sharp retorts and Jasmine's cool, measured responses layered another level of intrigue onto the chaos, amplifying the intensity until it felt as though the studio itself was alive with tension, every breath drawn a potential spark for the next revelation, and Kirk, sensing the tide turning, attempted to regain control by invoking his years of experience in the industry, claiming that everything had been handled with transparency and care. Though his words rang hollow against the visual evidence and the mounting testimony from his fellow cast members, just as the drama seemed to plateau, Kendra held up a folder of text messages between Kirk and a previously unnamed associate, the content suggesting manipulation, financial coercion, and secret meetings that had taken place off-camera, and as the camera zoomed in, the production team realized that these messages could constitute a smoking gun, the evidence everyone had been waiting for, a potential game-changer that could rewrite the public perception of every scandalous act. And while the cast exchanged sharp, knowing looks, the crowd of fans outside the studio doors grew restless, chanting Kirk's name in defiance or condemning it in outrage, the live feed capturing every echo of emotion as social media accounts exploded with commentary, screenshots, and theories that only deepened the complexity of the narrative, turning the night's scandal into a multi-layered saga spanning legal, emotional, and financial dimensions. Just when the room seemed to reach a fever pitch, Jasmine revealed a small flash drive from her pocket, claiming it contained hours of recordings that corroborated the claims of secret meetings, financial promises, and the existence of a second, legally recognized wife, and as she held it aloft, Rashida leaned in with a triumphant smile, whispering that this is only the beginning, a cryptic statement that immediately fueled speculation about additional hidden evidence, while Kendra nodded solemnly, signaling that she had her own ace in the hole that had yet to be played. The combined implication of the two women's hints sending Kirk into visible panic, his composure fracturing as he realized that the public narrative might finally slip beyond his control, and the studio, once a controlled environment for producing staged drama, had transformed into a live theater of unscripted chaos, where every glance, every movement, and every word carried the weight of potential legal ramifications and irreversible damage to personal reputations. In the ensuing hours, lawyers, producers, and cast members navigated a tangled web of interactions, with Kirk retreating into private discussions punctuated by whispered urgencies and subtle gestures, Rashida meticulously cataloging every piece of evidence she could muster, Jasmine maintaining a constant digital presence that broadcasted the tension in real time, Kendra coordinating her legal strategy while subtly reminding the others of the implications of exposure, and Mendices oscillating between public commentary and private advisories, a shadow presence that both guided and unsettled, as social media amplified each second of on-camera drama, transforming what had begun as a traditional reunion special into a sprawling saga of betrayal, suspense, and the relentless pursuit of truth. And as the night stretched toward dawn, the studio remained a crucible of tension, with the weight of secrets, accusations, and potential outcomes pressing down on every participant, the world watching, commenting, and speculating as the saga of 2 wives, 3 babies, and a single man's tangled choices continued to unfold with breathtaking unpredictability, promising that no resolution would come without further shock, confrontation, and revelation. By mid-morning, the network's attempts at damage control had become nearly irrelevant, as fan communities, social media influencers, and gossip blogs dissected every leaked recording, photo, and cryptic post, constructing speculating on paternity, and debating the legal ramifications of secret marriages, all while Kirk moved through the day like a man trying to outrun the storm, attending a series of scheduled interviews in which he insisted that nothing he had done was meant to deceive anyone, though his voice wavered when confronted with the undeniable evidence of the notarized documents and financial transfers. And Rashida, seizing the moment, issued a formal statement to the press that promised a full expose, asserting that she had held back only out of concern for the children. A remark that instantly drove comment sections into a frenzy with interpretations ranging from vindictive to heroic. Jasmine, meanwhile, posted an enigmatic video of herself walking through a dimly lit corridor, her words sparse but pointed. "The truth sees all," a phrase that left fans speculating about secret recordings, hidden footage, or further revelations yet to come, while Kendra, fully aware of the media storm she had helped generate, held a closed-door press conference in which she revealed that her attorneys had secured legal filings that could challenge Kirk's custody claims, a maneuver that drew widespread attention from both the entertainment press and mainstream news outlets, ensuring that the narrative would no longer be confined to reality TV circles. And Mendices, sensing a shift in the balance of public opinion, granted a live interview via video call, confirming that additional documents, including audio conversations and financial statements, were being withheld for legal reasons, but hinting that once revealed, they would fundamentally alter how fans perceived every character in the saga, creating a sense of anticipation so intense that trending hashtags multiplied exponentially and comment sections overflowed with fan theories, alliances, and predictions, all competing for attention in an information ecosystem fueled by scandal. By the afternoon, the tension reached a fever pitch as paparazzi caught glimpses of Kirk meeting with a lawyer in a downtown office building, an image that was quickly circulated alongside speculative captions, suggesting emergency legal action to prevent further leaks, while Rashida appeared at a charity event, subtly flaunting her engagement ring and quietly sending messages to journalists that promised additional revelations. Jasmine shared a series of photos implying late-night meetings with unknown figures, and Kendra released a detailed legal memo outlining potential challenges to Kirk's custody and financial arrangements, each move building on the last in a chain reaction of suspense, intrigue, and emotional stakes. And as the day turned to evening, the cast regrouped in the studio to rehearse for a final, unannounced live segment, their interactions tense, the air thick with anticipation, the crew uncertain if they would witness reconciliation, confrontation, or total collapse, and social media users, already exhausted by the non-stop stream of evidence, commentary, and speculation, could not look away, their devices lighting up with notifications and trending updates as every whispered conversation, tense glance, and carefully chosen word promised yet another twist in a story that had grown far beyond its humble reality TV beginnings. By nightfall, the drama had escalated to unprecedented heights, with Kirk being caught on hidden cameras, leaving a high-end hotel with an anonymous companion, a sequence of images that contradicted his earlier claims of transparency, while Rashida, Jasmine, and Kendra used the footage to craft narratives that both protected their interests and threatened to dismantle Kirk's carefully maintained public persona, the interplay of loyalty, betrayal, and public scrutiny rendering each participant a master of strategy, deception, or survival. And as the live feed continued, uninterrupted, fans, analysts, and casual observers alike were forced to reckon with the fact that the saga of 2 wives, 3 babies, and 1 man's choices had become a living, breathing narrative of suspense, scandal, and human drama, one that promised further shocks, confrontations, and revelations for as long as the cast and network were willing or able to sustain the story. As the city lights flickered on, casting long shadows across the streets outside the studio, the cast of the reunion special found themselves trapped in a vortex of public scrutiny, legal maneuvering, and personal confrontation, with every phone call, whispered meeting, and off-camera glance carrying the potential to ignite yet another wave of scandal. And Kirk, visibly exhausted, attempted to maintain composure as he reviewed text messages, emails, and recordings that had already leaked to the public, each one reminding him that the story had grown far beyond the boundaries of what he could control, while Rashida meticulously cross-checked every claim, ensuring that she had indisputable evidence to support her own narrative, and Jasmine, fully aware of the media frenzy, kept her followers engaged with carefully curated posts, selfies, and cryptic captions hinting at revelations that had yet to surface. A strategy that kept speculation at a fever pitch and public attention squarely on her every move. And Kendra, ever the strategist, balanced her legal obligations with her need to maintain a commanding public presence, releasing carefully timed statements that implied further bombshells were coming, all while Mendices played the role of both observer and provocateur, dropping hints to journalists and fans that promised new angles, secret recordings, and financial revelations that could append the already chaotic narrative. And as the hours stretched into late night, producers scrambled to assemble footage for a special broadcast designed to capitalize on the unrelenting public interest, while fans dissected every frame of leaked videos and social media posts, theorizing about alliances, betrayals, and the possible futures of each cast member. And every move seemed to escalate the drama. Kirk was spotted at a private residence with an unidentified woman, an image that sparked new debates over paternity and secret meetings. Rashida was caught leaving a lawyer's office with stacks of files that hinted at undisclosed evidence, Jasmine teased yet another revelation involving financial arrangements and custody implications. Kendra hinted at court filings that could challenge every claim made by Kirk or the other women, and Mendices continued to stoke the fire with interviews, live streams, and cryptic comments, creating an atmosphere where every glance, every word, and every interaction felt loaded with consequence. Leaving the studio, the network, and the public caught in a whirlwind of suspense, speculation, and emotional intensity, a sprawling narrative of deception, loyalty, and human ambition that had transcended the confines of reality television to become a cultural phenomenon, one in which the stakes legal, emotional, and social remained so high that no participant could predict the next move, the next revelation, or the next explosion of fan reaction, ensuring that the saga of Kirk, his 2 wives, 3 babies, and the tangled web of love, betrayal, and secrecy would dominate headlines, social feeds, and water-cooler conversations for weeks, months, and perhaps years to come. A relentless, evolving drama in which each day brought new surprises, new confrontations, and new questions about who could be trusted, who had been deceived, and how far each person was willing to go to protect themselves, their children, and their version of the truth. As the dust settled, though only slightly over the whirlwind of revelations, leaked recordings, secret marriages, and explosive confrontations, the saga of Kirk, Rashida, Jasmine, Kendra, and Mendices stood as a living testament to the unpredictability, intensity, and pure spectacle of reality television at its most chaotic. A story that had captivated millions of fans around the globe who had watched, shared, and argued over every frame, every whispered secret, and every carefully staged or unexpected moment that had emerged in the past weeks. And while some viewers were left questioning the morality of the choices made by those at the center of the storm, others found themselves mesmerized by the human drama, the raw emotions, and the high-stakes battles for loyalty, truth, and personal vindication. Because in the end, what had started as a simple reality show reunion had become an epic tale of intrigue, betrayal, and the relentless pursuit of control over one's narrative, with twists and turns so numerous and shocking that even the most seasoned producers and journalists struggled to keep pace. And as fans pored over leaked documents, photos, texts, and videos, dissecting each new piece of information with the intensity of detectives on a high-profile case, it became clear that the story was far from over, that each revelation had the power to change public perception, rewrite alliances, and redraw the boundaries of trust, loyalty, and personal reputation. And in this maelstrom of attention and speculation, the cast themselves had to navigate not only the public eye but their own complex relationships, emotional scars, and the practical realities of parenthood, business, and personal survival. And every glance, every cryptic social media post, and every tense exchange became ammunition for fans, bloggers, and critics who dissected the minutiae of every interaction to predict the next scandal or secret to explode into the spotlight. Because in a world where fame is both currency and weapon, every misstep or triumph is amplified, analyzed, and judged by millions. And as we reflect on the events that have unfolded, it's impossible not to recognize the extraordinary level of tension, strategy, and emotional depth that defined each cast member's actions. From Kirk's attempts to maintain control despite mounting evidence and public scrutiny, to Rashida's unwavering determination to protect her children and assert her truth, Jasmine's skillful balance of secrecy and calculated revelation, Kendra's sharp legal maneuvers and timing of explosive disclosures, and Mendices' unpredictable influence as both commentator and provocateur, all combining to create a perfect storm of drama, suspense, and narrative complexity that has kept viewers on the edge of their seats, speculating, theorizing, and engaging in endless debates. And as you watch, it's worth considering not only the spectacle before you but also the human stakes behind every accusation, confession, and revelation, because these are people navigating tangled relationships, complex emotional landscapes, and the consequences of public scrutiny in real time, with every decision carrying weight beyond the cameras and into their lives and the lives of their children. And as we stand witness to this epic tale, you, the viewer, are invited to become part of the discussion, part of the ongoing analysis, and part of the collective fascination that has made this story a global phenomenon, a narrative that transcends the boundaries of traditional reality, television, and becomes a cultural touchstone for how secrets, lies, love, betrayal, and ambition intersect in a world obsessed with fame, attention, and spectacle. And so, as we bring this chapter to a close now consider what comes next. Because the story is far from finished, and your voice, your opinions, and your engagement are what keep the drama alive, what fuel the anticipation, and what ensure that every twist, turn, and revelation continues to resonate with millions around the world. So don't just watch passively, don't let the story unfold without you, but like, subscribe, and comment below to share your theories, reactions, and predictions, to weigh in on the evidence, to side with who you believe, to debate the motivations, and to immerse yourself fully in the saga of Kirk, Rashida, Jasmine, Kendra, and Mendices, because this is more than entertainment. It's a living, breathing narrative of human ambition, emotion, and consequence. And your participation is the final piece that turns the spectacle into a shared experience, a conversation that spans continents, platforms, and generations, ensuring that the story lives on long after the cameras stop rolling, the headlines fade, and the reunion special ends. And as you engage, remember that every like, comment, and share is a ripple in this ongoing ocean of drama, a way to make your voice heard, to express your judgment, to stake your claim in the debate, and to participate in one of the most sensational, outrageous, and unrelenting reality TV narratives of our time. A story that proves again and again that in the world of fame, secrets, and scandal, there are no true winners or losers, only those who survive the attention, navigate the drama, and keep the audience wanting more. And now it's your turn. Dive in, weigh in, and be part of the chaos, because Kirk's saga is far from over, and the next shocking revelation could be just around the corner, waiting for you to see, share, and react.